Hi, this is Chris with another home improvement project from MySandySpringsTV.com. This week we're going to be taking a look at drywall repair and paint prep. We hope you enjoy it. So the most common issue you're going to run into when you're repairing a wall in your home, apartment, whatever, are going to be nail holes and screw holes. Whether they be from hanging a picture, a mirror, hanging a TV even sometimes. Now, as you can see, these holes are fairly small. The easiest and quickest way to take care of these is with a lightweight spackling compound. Now, as you can see, it has a consistency of about shaving cream. So for those small pinholes in your wall, the easiest way to do it is to take some on your finger, press it into the hole, wipe away the excess. And you'll just repeat that until you get all your holes filled. Now the good thing about the spackling compound is, one, it dries quick, about 10 minutes, and two, long as you reseal it, it has a pretty good shelf life. Now for screw holes or larger nail holes, you're going to want to add obviously a little bit more. And you know what, before we do that, I'll show you guys a little trick. You can take the blunt end of your scraper and give a slight press, because what happens when you pull a screw or a large nail out is the drywall tends to buckle outwards, giving you a bulge on the wall. So what this does is recesses it back quite a bit and gives you a smoother surface to start working from. You can run your finger across, see if you need to do any more. And once you're good, you take your compound and you start to apply it. Now one change for a hole of this size is you're going to still apply it with your finger if you like, but you're really going to want to finish it off with that blade of that scraper. That's going to help press it in and keep you from pressing another dimple into the drywall itself. It comes right off, and you can even take the excess on your blade and move on to the next hole if you have enough. With the screw holes smoothed over and filled, we're going to move on to slightly more difficult problems, namely scratches and holes in the drywall. So, for scratches, especially large scratches such as this one, and definitely for holes of this size, you're not going to want to use a spackling, you're going to actually use drywall mud. Now this comes in small tubs, so don't worry, you don't have to pick up a 5-gallon. For a small scratch like this, there's no need to really use a mud tray. You can just take your blade, get some mud on it, and then you're going to want to start to run the mud down the scratch. You're always going to want to go wider than the scratch because you will want to sand this back even with your wall. And you want to make sure you fill the entirety of the scratch. A good way to do that is to run a bit more mud than you need down through it. Clean your blade, grab a bit more, and just make sure you're pressing down as you go. Now, for the most part, that finishes off a small crack like this. When this dries, you are going to need to go back and sand and repaint, obviously, if the wall has any color to it. Moving on to a bigger scratch, you can see this is slightly wider and definitely quite a bit deeper. You can almost press into the drywall. So what you're going to want to do is take your sanding block and just go over the scratch and the area around it, and you can see how that's flaking off. So you can have a smoother surface as possible to start out. Now, for a scratch like this, you could use the mud straight out of the bucket, but what's going to be easier is to take some and put in a tray. Now, something to remember about using drywall mud is you never want to pull out more than what's workable at that time, because if it dries out, it's useless. So put what you need in the tray, seal your mud back up, and you can put it aside. Come in, try to thin it out a little bit if you can, and just scoop it up. And it's almost the same application. You're trying to fill the hole and make sure you get it down in there securely. And never try to fill just the crack itself. Always go a little bit wider, because when you come back and sand, you want to try to blend the surface of the wall that wasn't damaged with where you repaired. You want it to be as subtle as possible. Now you can keep working at this with a small blade like this, but really what you want to do is get a blade that matches the hole you're messing with, or the scratch. So in this case, to do this in one even swoop, I'm going to go up to a bigger size blade. This is a 4-inch, which covers the entire surface of the scratch, and I can just pull along and that takes off the excess. Now with that done, once again, anytime you're working with mud, before you sand anything, you always want to let it dry. If I tried to sand this now, I'd just end up making a worse mess than what I have, and I'd have to redo the entire patch over again. So while this and our previous patch are drying, we're going to move on to a real problem, which is a hole in the drywall. Now, for a hole in the drywall, what you want to use is an actual mesh patch. And what this consists of is a fiber mesh with one sticky side and a metal plate. You pull off your paper and you want to try to center that hole right under the metal plate. Smooth it down, and the first part of the patch is done. Now that metal plate is there to make sure that the mud stays on this side of the plate, which is what you want, and also that nothing presses through that hole once it's patched and clean. So make sure your edges are down, and once again we're going to take a bigger blade, and from there we just start the application. Now keep your directions consistent, that'll save you a lot of headache. So we're going to take this from left to right and pull it across. And just like the other patches, you want to make sure you go outside of the area of the actual repair. The worst thing you can do with drywall repair is patch a hole and not be able to blend it into the rest of the wall, because then it just stands out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep patching this, and we're going to come back when it's done and we're going to show you how to sand it. Now we've applied a few more coats of mud to each one of these and given them time to dry. And we've started our sanding. Now as you can see, where I told you, you always want to do it a bit wider than the crack that you're patching. You can now blend in, and it's a lot less obvious to where your repair was. Now once you get them to that point where you can roll your hand across and you feel it more or less smooth, you can add a little bit more if you want, but really it's never ever going to be perfectly done. So what you want to do is get it to that point where you can barely perceive the patch, and then you're ready to match your paint and paint back over it. One last tip before we leave: molding repair. Sometimes you might break a piece of molding, a chair might hit it, whatever. You have to rip it out. You'll end up with a seam. A really quick way to fix that is to take a tube of caulk. You always want to cut it at a slight angle, and you just run a bead right up your seam. Just like when we use the mud, you want to make sure you get it completely in the gap, and once it's dry you can paint over it and your motor repair is done. I hope you enjoyed this and took away some tips that can help you around the house. This has been Chris with another home improvement project from MySandySpringsTV.com. We hope to see you again next week. Take care.